Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Riv after a brutal, more humidity today, rain for the next 6 days. It's a beautiful thing. I'll tell you
It's a
this.
beautiful day in the neighborhood.
This is the worst summer I can remember in ever. I'll tell you,
You
humidity,
know, the
rain. It's just,
interesting part was when it started, it was actually pretty decent. I mean, it wasn't bad. It wasn't humid. Then we got a couple of days of humidity. Then it was fine again. And now it's just two
it's
weeks of
relentless.
hell. Yeah,
Yeah,
2 weeks of hell.
it's nuts. Well, we got a lot of things to talk about. We're on the verge of World War III in the Middle East, I guess.
I know.
Iran has gotten in rattle their saber, said they are gonna strike Israel. We sent an aircraft carrier down, another aircraft carrier down there, and it looks like remember Nostradamus, or as I like to call him, Nostradamus, but he predicted the end of the world would start in the Middle East, and I don't know. It looks like we're on the verge of World War III. Biden strikes again, with his great foreign
End of the
policy.
world as you know it.
That's right. But Biden and his great policy, he made Iran rich, and he caused this. Lifted all their sanctions. Now they got the money to do this stuff. And look, people go, "Oh, don't worry, they wouldn't do that." No, logical people wouldn't do that. Those people aren't logical. They are radical Islamic terrorists. And I know Kamala said not to use that, but that's what they are, because they want to kill everybody who isn't a Shiite Muslim, even Muslims, Sunnis and stuff. So they're crazy. Okay, they're nutty, and we're on the verge of World War III, and then of course Biden and his other things. I just saw. I don't know if you saw it. I watched the local news, then I watched the world news in the morning before the show, before always anyway, because we like to keep informed. They discovered that. Remember when Biden announced a while back he was having a special program not to have them cross the border, but to fly them directly into the United States from Venezuela, Haiti, and a couple of other countries,
Right.
which are all not friendly to the United States. But he's just going to bring them right in. Well, I saw a report. It's breaking now. There are literally millions of these people in here illegally being taken care of by the United States. That program said they had to have a sponsor, and that sponsor was going to assist them financially with housing, et cetera, in order to come here. Now, if you want something screwed up, you want people to skim money, and it's got to be the NGOs or the people who are involved in this, just like the $24 million they lost in San Francisco and the $24 billion, I think it was actually. They found now that they don't have sponsors. Millions and millions of them don't have sponsors. They said 100,000 of them had the same sponsor's name, and that person doesn't sponsor 100,000 people. Dead people sponsored them. Another one had 30,000 with the same name for sponsors. Bottom line is they've brought in millions of these people into this country under the guise of, they're going to be, we've got some safeguards and we're going to take care of them. Wrong. They're on welfare somewhere, staying on a hotel room on our dime. I'll tell you, this administration, the only thing close to this on a smaller scale, because it's a city, is Fall River under Paul Coogan. I mean, he's like Biden Jr., but I've never seen anybody such a catastrophe as Biden. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it back.
It's interesting because I was up at 5:30 this morning, 5 o'clock this morning, and I was watching the news, and I was watching the world news, and then I watched the local news, kind of like you. Gotta know what's going on. And I want to be sponsored by that guy that's got 100,000 people, because obviously he must have a lot of money. Give them housing and jobs and everything. Boy, laid out on. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not an illegal. That's right. I can't get those things. It's like Laura Healy and in initiating the 5-day rule on the homeless shelters. 5 days, and then you can't apply for 6 months. And people are saying, that's not fair. That's not right. You're putting people on the street. Is it right that I pay? Is it right that my taxes be used? Is it right that I pay for their health care? Is it right that I pay for the employees to run those respite centers? Is it right that they slept in the airport? She let them live anywhere they wanted. I'm surprised they weren't living on the train. Probably because it was too hot. But hey, what can I tell you? It's interesting. But we've got to get a hold of our immigration problems. Okay, you have the Biden administration, aka the Kamala disgrace, saying that they took control of immigration, and we're seeing how. They don't want you to know that, because that would ruin their chance of getting elected president. And you'll notice she's milking that vice presidential announcement. She has to make it today because tomorrow is the last day to file paperwork to be on the ballot. Not only in Massachusetts, but in many other states. So explain something to me, Chip. Why the hell would the Democratic National Committee schedule their convention for after the deadline? After the deadline. Why? Because this was a coronation. This was a coronation. The people weren't allowed their right to vote and say who it was. And then when you had somebody who had a good chance of running and making a difference in the campaign, you had Bobby Kennedy, who's now running as an independent. The Democratic Party said, no, we're not going to let you. We don't want you. We don't want you. Just like they've done to several other amazing presidential candidates. I wonder if you remember who. I can remember. I can remember a lot of this. I'm not saying the Republicans have been any better, but at least they didn't do somebody by coronation. The people voted. The people's voice was heard, and that's where it went. Now, some people think that they made a bad choice with the vice presidential candidate, but I think that candidate is going to reach out and get some good youth involved. But let's pick on it correctly, all right? At least when Trump says he's going to close the borders, he closes the borders. When the Biden administration and the Kamala administration said they were going to close the borders, they closed the borders with exceptions. 5,000 people a day, or 5,000 families a day, whatever it may be. This is how they do it. It's the same way in Massachusetts, okay? Because the 5-day rule has now got exceptions. It can be extended for 30 days. This is what happens. This is what happens. I'm not making it up.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're not, CJ. And this is what, but it's who's making all the money? These NGOs and all these connected people. Listen, what everybody should do is tell anybody who's been displaced from their homes because they can't afford, lost their house, can't afford to eat, can't afford to get a decent place, got to skip meals. Everybody just leave. Go down to Tijuana, drive across the border, ditch your car, walk back across the border, and say you're an illegal. And then you're going to get a house, medical care, everything you want. I mean, what is wrong with these people? And, you know, the irony, Carmela's even got a commercial already. And on a commercial, she basically says they're not going to close the border. If you pay attention, because she says in her commercial, if I'm elected president, I am going to push through that bill that got defeated before, which allows like 5,000 a day before they even attempt to close the border. Allowing 5,000 a day before you even attempt, and they don't have to close it. It's discretionary. Do the math. 5,000 a day, 365 days a year. Get out your calculators. That's closing the border? I mean, they think everybody is stupid. And then she talks in that same commercial, because that's their thing. And then the abortion issue. And I'm going to make sure that you have a government guarantee in all states. She's got that on a commercial, that bozo. Number one, she said she's going to push the border bill back through. That wasn't really a border bill. The one that the House passed was going to be, and they shot that down so fast with that Senate majority they got, it didn't go anywhere because it would have closed the border. But the one that doesn't close the border, she's going to push through. And then now she's talking about the government's going to make sure you can get the rights that she determines for abortion are the correct rights in any state. Now, CJ, refresh my memory. Didn't the Supreme Court of the United States say that no, the government can't control every state? States have autonomy. This is a state decision. Is my memory serving me correctly?
That's exactly what the Supreme Court said. We're giving this decision back to the states.
But Kamala's giving you to pick a finger like Joe Biden does. Supreme Court said you can't do it. I'm still going to do it. I don't like something. Who does that remind you of in Fall River? Paulie. I don't take no for an answer. The Supreme Court tells me I can't do it. Screw the Supreme Court. I'm still going to do it. This is what the Democrats do. These people are as nutty as the Iranians. You know, they want to fashion. Everything's got to be their way. She's got that in a commercial. The government is going to make sure that you have rights in every. So you can't do that. The Supreme Court already said that. They don't care. They hype everything up. They lie about everything. Just like you come to Fall River. Our CFO said, I watched the historical video. I'm going to go back to the council meeting. I'm writing them a letter. I hope you go down to CJ and ask them. We went to every meeting on the Durfee debt override. Never once did Paul Coogan ever say, oh, that you'll only not have to pay this if we don't spend anything for the next 5 years, which is absurd. And we wouldn't have jumped on that. He never said that once. And that was our argument. There's no way that they're not going to stop spending and they're going to be able to absorb this into the budget. But every single time, Paul Coogan said, don't worry, at 2023, by 2023, we'll be able to absorb that. You won't be paying anything. And if it is, it's only going to be a small amount at every single meeting. And if my memory is incorrect, CJ, please correct me, because that's what he said. I want to know what video she saw and who it was said to. It was never said to the people they were trying to sell that debt override to at the neighborhoods. That's why Kadeem was 100% right saying, we've got to do this because we can't even understand this. Their numbers are always wrong. They lie. And all those three bobbleheads that wanted to preach the Coogan doctrine. Oh, give it to the people. That's the right thing to do. No, you can't give it to the people when you can't give them accurate numbers and they don't understand any. That's what the council is elected for. They are our fiduciaries. When it comes to fight something like that, a huge financial burden, they are our fiduciaries. They're supposed to get the numbers. They couldn't even get the numbers. It's a marketing gimmick. They did that so they could say, "Oh, look at me. Oh, I'm for democracy." Just like Kamala and Joe, we're saving democracy by lying to you, making you vote for something you have no idea what you're voting on, with all the rich banks and the rich developers financing them, and the poor people like CJ and me. Steve Camaro was on that group. We had a whole group said, "No, we gotta pay for this out of, no override." But we couldn't outweigh that. They had flyers, they had ads, they had TV.
That Bay Coast paid for.
That's right.
And
exactly.
if you remember correctly, I filed the complaint which forced Bay Coast to reveal where the money was coming from, because they thought they were above the law and they didn't have to report it. And the city clerk did nothing to enforce it initially until the complaint was filed. Then all of a sudden it was, "Oh, we mistakenly forgot about it. We didn't know we had to do it. It was a mistake. We're going to file it late. We're going to file it now." They weren't hit with a $25 a day fine. They weren't hit with any repercussions. And all they did was give me, "Which finger do you want?"
And they got all the insurance business in the city of Fall River.
That's right.
Coincidentally, right? They made a hell of a lot. They're doing a hell of a lot of business at Fall River that they weren't doing before this debt override. So connect the dots. Connect the dots.
Especially when it's a relative of the dictator.
Yeah, that who runs their insurance piece.
That's right.
That's true. But you look at this, the world's falling apart, people. You got to get to the polls. You just got to look. You keep saying, "Look what they're doing," but we're letting them do it because you keep electing these bozos.
That's it.
On every level, you can't. And did you see the Sheldon White House commercial? Have you seen it?
Well, they didn't put Boofa in it.
They didn't put Boofa. I mean, that is the most condescending commercial. You got a guy that's so rich. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was born with a gold one in every orifice. And he identifies with regular people, like J. Paul Getty did. I mean, that commercial, even the way they say things, they don't understand how condescending you can do with the way your phraseology. I'm a word guy. In that commercial, he talks about how wonderful I get to represent Rhode Island. I go on to the nook and crannies of Rhode Island. I love Rhode Island. Everybody loves Rhode Island. The nook and cranny. And I love it when I go to the supermarket. He goes to the corner supermarket and rubs elbows with the poor people. Sure, Sheldon. Of course you do. And then he said, "And I love it when they bend my ear about something that they think is important." Bend your ear? Bend your ear? Really? You realize what you're saying indirectly? You realize the implication of that verbiage? You're basically saying, like, "You're inconveniencing me. You're bending my ear. Oh, get away. I want to put my earplugs in. I got to listen to your shit when I go to the supermarket." He didn't say, "I get to meet with my constituents and listen to what they feel should be done and listen to their problems and look at them for the direction I'm going to take as a senator." No! Oh, I love it when they bend my ear. It's like a rich guy telling you as a compliment, but it isn't really a compliment. "Wow, I'm surprised you know this much about wine." It's like, Really? Because I grew up in a three-decker. I'm not supposed to know anything about wine or anything else that is refined. These people are elitists, and you keep electing these elitist idiots. You know, like just look at our Senate. Who do we have in the Senate? Look at them. I mean, elite. Oh, I'm gonna have a beer. I mean, you know, Hiawatha is an elitist. Everybody, you look at Massachusetts and Rhode Island. It's just nuts. I mean, these people, and this is as bad as California. I mean, nobody. When's the last? Nobody's ever been elected from this area to Congress. Not in my recollection, CJ. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
not that I can remember.
I mean, they're always from Newton, Wellesley, one of the rich towns up around Boston. Nobody ever gets elected from Fall River, New Bedford.
Who was the last Republican?
Margaret Heckler.
That's right, Peg Heckler.
That's right.
Peg Heckler.
That's right. I see. We know our political history.
That's right, and that's when people came out and voted.
That's right.
That's when people came out and voted, which showed you that Fall River wasn't always a diehard Democratic community.
Actually, Fall River voted very, very strongly for Margaret Heckler.
Right.
And ironically enough, unlike Jakey Auchincloss, who only comes down here to kiss butt and say he loves Fall River, but you never see him here except when he's pushing something or running for election or supporting somebody who's running for election. Margaret Heckler actually did interact a lot with the city of Fall River.
Yes, she
Came
did.
down here often. And heaven forbid she was a Republican. But in those days, you actually had some Republicans. And that's the irony of Massachusetts. It shows how like bipolar they are. Because we've had numerous Republican governors, never had a Republican majority in
the House or the
Senate ever, not even
ever.
close.
No.
But we have a Republican governor. And granted, those Republican governors kind of moderate, kind of rhino Republicans, but they were Republicans. And look, the moral of the story is, look what's happening to this government. You let this government go unfettered, unaccountable for what they do. They're doing what Paul's doing here. Just keep spending. These immigrants got in 100,000 names with the same sponsor. I can tell you one thing. That guy's probably got a house that's about 100 times larger than Mar-a-Lago. If he's sponsoring 100,000 immigrants, you know, I mean, and how many trillions of dollars has been spent? So hey, there's only one way to do it. Get rid of these people.
Well, I've got a little bit of information for you. From 1864 to 1924, Massachusetts was a reliably Republican state, going Democratic only in the election of 1912, when the Republican Party was split. So that shows you for a long time, 1864 to 1924, 60 years. 60 years, Massachusetts was a Republican state. Democrats had to actually work for a vote.
But you remember, now the Democrats, again, is so great at revisionist history. They change history. Well, what was 1864? Civil War.
That's right.
Who was the president? Republican, Abraham Lincoln. The Republicans were anti-slavery. The Democrats were pro-slavery. But now they tell everybody that they've always been against. They're the ones who are really caring about the black community, which is an absolute lie. Half of the Democratic senators were part of the KKK, even in the 20th century. So the reality is the reason that Massachusetts was Republican from 1864 through that period was because people actually read newspapers. They didn't get their news from TikTok. They weren't propagandized with mainstream media like they are now. They got brainwashed. The Democratic Party completely changed history, revised history, and made themselves the champions of all the minorities, when in fact, if you look at history, it was the Republicans. Joe Biden himself was against integration. Joe Biden himself was friendly, very close friends, with Robert Byrd. And what was Robert Byrd, CJ?
Oh, I don't know. Could that be somebody? Could that be somebody that was anti-black, anti-slavery, anti-everything? Wrong. He wanted slavery. He wanted them because you know what? He wanted to keep them under their foot.
Yeah.
He wanted to keep them under their foot. Joe Biden was against busing, and remember Kamala Harris said, "When I was in school, I was one of those. I was a little kid that was on the bus." But Joe Biden was against that. Or am I wrong there?
Oh, no, you're right. As a matter of fact, Robert Byrd, it was alleged that he was a grand wizard in the Ku Klux Klan. Besides that, you know, there were people that were just blatant segregationists in the United States. You know, remember when they...
Even up to most recently, what's his name? Who just died and left the Congress. He was like 90 some odd years old from down south.
Oh yeah, like
yeah, and he was still a segregationist. He was still anti-black, and they kept electing him.
Look, there were segregationists in the 50s and 60s when they were trying to force integration, and we were having all the marches in the 60s and stuff like that, and we had people in the House of Congress that were arguing for segregation, supporting segregation, elected all the time. And this is the thing. And the Democratic Party is like, you know what? You remember what's their new slogan? Kamala doesn't want anybody to study history, because if you study history, you may not repeat it. But if you don't, you're doomed to repeat it. But remember what Colin said. Oh, let's not remember what has been, something like that. Let's just look forward. Yeah, don't look back at the fact that, you know, just a couple of years ago, you know, it wasn't that long ago when Joe Biden said, we don't want integration in schools. I don't want my children going to a school that's been turned into a racial jungle. Now, Kamala's changed their policy on everything. So what's the moral of the story? They're pathological liars. They just say whatever it takes to get elected. You can't believe anything they say. You can't believe anything most politicians say. But at least the Republicans are fairly well entrenched being constitutionalists. Most conservatives are constitutionalists. That's why I don't like either party. Fact is that I believe in a constitution. We should run this country the way it was designed to be run. But these people are all looking for power. But the reality is the Democrats, I mean, they've got an abysmal history. That's why they want you to forget it all. Don't think about what we did yesterday. Kamala said, oh, you know, even though they got miles of footage and video of her saying she's for the borders is closed. Oh, they're not closed. Now she's going to close the border with a bill that doesn't close the border. Now she's in favor of fracking, even though there's miles of footage saying, oh, she's going to stop everything. All fossil fuel is dead with her. But now, whoops, I might not get elected. Hey, you look out for Pennsylvania, fracking, woo-hoo. we could lose Pennsylvania. And you talked about a VP choice. They're in a quandary here too, because they said they're such hypocrites. You know, they said Shapiro is the top candidate, but they're afraid.
She needs Pennsylvania. That's why.
Right, but if she gets Shapiro, they're afraid they're going to lose Michigan with the Muslim vote. So
exactly.
they're in deep doo-doo because all they worry about, you see, that's the key. It's got nothing to do with let's do what's best for America. Close the borders. Allow us to frack and produce energy to keep prices down like Trump did. Don't make Iran rich. Do things. But no, all they worry about is votes. And now they're in a quandary. Like you said, Shapiro's, they think they need Pennsylvania. Shapiro could deliver Pennsylvania to them. But if she appoints Shapiro, there goes Michigan.
Right.
Because the Hamas arm of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party will go batshit crazy. Because not only is Shapiro Jewish, he served in the IDF. He served in the Israeli army. So but it just goes to show what they're really about. The Democrats are only about one thing: getting elected. Whether it's allowing you to bend their ear when you tell them what your concerns are, or whether it's, I don't give a damn what you want or think. Like you said, CJ, you said it clearly. You know, they wanted Bernie Sanders. The party elite said, no, you're getting Hillary. Now they stuck Joe in again, and they said, oh, Joe may not get elected. That was the key. If they thought they could get him elected, Cretin Joe would still be wandering around the White House aimlessly. But now they said, okay, and we don't care about the 14.5 million people who voted for Joe Biden. We're just going to, as you said, make a coronation. So now we have Queen Kamala.
Yeah, and the worst part about it was to justify this selection, this coronation. They said, well, she was on the ticket with Joe. Therefore, they voted for her as well. No, they voted for her as vice president. They voted for her as vice president, not as president, not as a presidential candidate. You took the selection process away from the people and put it in the hands of 3,000 or 4,000 select Democrats to make the decision. And it was amazing how she had the delegates before they even did the virtual conference. She had the delegates already. So you knew it was a fix. Now the powers that be in the Democratic Party are deciding who are they going to put in. Are they going to put in Kelly? Are they going to put in Shapiro? Are they going to put in Bashir? Nobody knows. I think that decision's already been made because a mayor in Philadelphia turned around and said Joe Shapiro and Kamala Harris will make a great team for the country. Okay? So I think the bag has been opened. The cat got out and all of a sudden said, no, that's not what I was saying. I was just showing my support. Baloney. You rip the bag open. You rip the bag open. Pete Buttigieg had a snowball's chance in hell of becoming the vice presidential candidate. In my opinion. There was just too much around him that was questionable for the party.
He couldn't even run a city, and he's been an unmitigated disaster as transportation.
Oh yeah, I know. Look at the. I mean,
he's an unmitigated. He's a walking disaster. That's just like they all are. Raimondo. Yep. They're all disasters. But Kelly, why did they want to pick Kelly? Arizona. Arizona's a swing state. Arizona's right now. You know, the Republicans are leading in Arizona. Kelly's a former astronaut, might deliver Arizona to them. Everything they do is pushed by what they're going to get for the vote,
As the vote,
not what's good for the people that they serve. And this is the problem with the Democratic Party. And the thing is, the dummies, the regular people of the party, just keep letting them do it. They did it with Bernie. Now they're doing it again. And they're going like, oh, okay, I guess there's nothing we can do. Yes, they are. You know, become independents. Yeah. Or heaven forbid, become Republicans, but don't stay with a party that ignores you, that says, okay, I'll listen to you only if you agree with me. But if you don't agree with me, well, everything you say doesn't count. And these people, they're blatant about it. That's the thing that gets me. They don't hide it. They don't hide. And of course, the mayor of Philly said that, like you said, CJ. We know politics. That's to push them up. Every election in these states, when it's tight, what makes the determination? The big blue cities in states where most of the suburbs are kind of red, right? Always the big cities. Philly, it's always blue and very, very, very blue. And just like all the big cities, you go to Texas. Texas is a red state. Austin's got a Democratic mayor, the capital. Austin is blue, and it's navy blue. And it's also probably the worst place in Texas. They got junkies laying. I got pictures of the junkies. I walked over them when I went down there. That place is a mess. All the blue cities are a mess. Philly's a mess. Baltimore's a mess. But
Fall River's a mess.
When you get to those states and you look at the inner cities, the big cities that are terrible, well, the 25 worst cities in the United States are all blue. And we've got the documented proof of that. I mean, look at it. San Francisco, New York, Austin, you name them. I mean, you can just go down the line.
Don't you find it interesting, San Francisco, such a pit, and two very prominent Democrats come out of there, Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris. And the city's a dump.
Yeah. And it shows how much they care about their own city, because they live in some gated area that you can't get close. The reality is, let's face it. Nancy Pelosi has been one of the most powerful people in government in the United States for a long time.
For over 20
years. If she cared about San Francisco, you think it would be the way it is? She doesn't give a damn about what happens in San Francisco, because they're all above it, like the elitist movie actors. They're all above this. And who was the mayor of San Francisco? Gavin Newsom. He wrecked that. What did he do for the city? Nothing. He started wrecking San Francisco. They finished it. London Breeze finished it. And the other, then now he's wrecked the state of California. But these people just don't care. I mean, let's face it. You got Kamala. Kamala was the attorney general. She was, these people are powerful, powerful people. You're telling me that you should turn, and like I say, arguably, and I know you've been there, as have I, one of the most beautiful cities on the planet. When
I was there, it was.
If not the most beautiful city in the United States. A lot of beautiful cities in the United States. Don't say there's a lot of great cities in the United States. But I'm going to tell you something. San Francisco was unique. That's why, that's why they wrote the song, I left my heart in San Francisco, and it's just it was an iconic city, and now it's a slum. And how can that be? Great question you pose. How can that be when some of the most powerful and influential people in our government are from the San Francisco Bay Area?
You never know. You never know. That's for sure. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you have a good week. I hope you have a good day. And remember, it is Amnesty Week at the Florida Public Library. Doesn't matter how long, doesn't matter how much. Bring it back by Friday, and you don't got to pay a fine. I want to thank you all for watching. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. It'll be the first time Paul doesn't pick your pocket.
Out of my heart in San Francisco.